All right, thank you. I'm going to try and get by without the microphone. Everybody good? Mike have big mouth. Mike talk lot. All right, so some of you are probably wondering why you have an old guy with white hair and a big belly up here talking about AI to you. And I will explain my path into this world and how I got there and where I am now, and how excited and scared I am about it with law enforcement, which is, again, all stuff that I'm going to talk about today. At any point, anybody that's been through my classes before, you know that once I get going, I get going. So if you have a question or you want to challenge something, just bring it up. Just raise your hand. At some point, I'll recognize you, and we'll get that out there. First thing, though, I want to do is there are some Lexipol customers in the room, so you don't need this. But if you're not a Lexipol customer and you want a policy, because one of the things I'm going to be focusing on today is the importance of policy. And I don't mean just the Lexipol policy. I mean, you have to have a policy on this, and for reasons that will become clear as I go through the content today. So this is to our global, what we call our global, but as is typical, our legislature, well, I don't know, really any legislatures that are up to date with anything pertaining to AI and the implications of it. There's some things that are being put into bills now, but the point is you need to control it. And I can't emphasize that enough. This is extremely important material, and literally in just a little under 2 years, I have realized how important it is. And I'm trying to present this in as many chiefs and sheriffs groups as I can. I'll be doing this in Ohio, a variation of this program in Ohio on Sunday. I did it in Louisiana, Kansas, and a few others down the road. So it's very, very important stuff. Because what I've learned and what I believe is that this is something that can catch you unprepared and be an embarrassment. Not just an embarrassment, but be for your agency and for your officers, but especially like here in New York with our discovery laws, could tarnish an officer's career or a deputy's career forever by having them on a Brady list or having them having to forever be disclosed through our disclosure laws, or discovery laws, pardon me, hopefully, or in the, I've been traveling so much, I don't even know where that stands right now. Anyway, so that's what this is about. So this is, we're just gonna kind of go through quickly, what is AI, why do we care? And then, importance of policy, areas of function, areas of concern, questions. So I'm gonna do it from two aspects. Number one is for you as individuals, and number two, for your agency in general, right? In other words, what do you personally need to be concerned about if you're going to use these tools, which, by the way, I am going to encourage you to do. But it's like having a firearm. You have to respect it, and you have to treat it properly, and you have to understand that you don't point and loaded AI at anybody without, and again, more as we go through. But first thing I'm going to do, AI can produce some very, very convincing fakes. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a screenshot up here. I'm going to put a picture up here, and you have to quickly decide whether it's real or whether it is AI generated. Ready? That's me. That was my last day at Glenville on my trusty steed, Horny, with my RoboCop armor, which I had to leave behind at the station. But no, just I am going to try and also have, again, anybody that's been through my classes knows I like to try and have a little fun with stuff. So that's what we're also going to do. It's a very serious topic, but some of the stuff that's coming out, and I'll show you a video later that will be humorous, but man, it is high quality. It is very high quality, and you'll enjoy the nudity in it too. But so the first thing is, I'm just going to start out. All right. So what are the issues, right? What are the issues in using AI in law enforcement? So again, I'll get to my path through this and where I am right now with it. But so this is and again, if I mention a platform, I am not advocating for them. I'm just telling you that this is the kind of stuff that's out there, because there's like a gazillion different platforms that utilize AI. So this one happened to be Veed, V-E-E-D. And I just used what I could for free because I'm cheap. And but God knows my credit card's in too many places already. So this is just what you're going to see was just me and about 10 minutes on their website. And all I did was indicate through some prompts, I'm going to do a presentation on AI and law enforcement, and I need to discuss the issues involved with that. And that's pretty much it. And then I picked her for obvious reasons. I could have picked a lot of different people to be the face of it, because she doesn't exist. And they came up with the what you're about to hear. So,
artificial intelligence is revolutionizing law enforcement, but it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, AI enhances crime.
Can you hear that in the back?
Streamlining investigations and improving public safety. Imagine algorithms analyzing vast amounts of data to identify patterns that humans might miss. Yet, we must tread carefully. The ethical implications are profound. Relying too heavily on AI can lead to biases in policing, infringing on civil liberties, and eroding trust in the justice system. Transparency is crucial. We need clear guidelines on how AI is used, ensuring accountability while fostering innovation. Balancing these elements is not just a challenge, it's our responsibility. The future of law enforcement depends on it. Artificial intelligence is revolutionizing law enforcement, but it's a double-edged sword.
So a lot of AI blinking going on there, which would need to be corrected in a paid-for version and stuff. But again, I just throw that out as just an example of this is the stuff that's out there. Because we did a What Cops Want survey in 2024. We actually did another one, Lexipol did in 2025. I don't have the results for that one yet, but as of then, only 9% of agencies are using or offering generative AI tools. And then you can see, but there's a lot of plans to use them. All right, let's pretend there's going to be some cooperation here, because this is like, I really need to know your level of familiarity with all this stuff, and I can kind of that will help guide my comments on this fly here. So how many of you are using some type of AI product at your agencies right now? One? What is it, if I may ask? Or?
Change.
Oh, you are using it?
Personally, yeah. To do maybe polish up a press release or something.
Okay, hold on. If you have to go to the bathroom, don't. You have to stay. All right. Now, anybody else using it officially, or? Okay. Anybody using it personally? ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Consensus, anything like that? All those out there? All right. Well, I'm here to tell you that your people are. And here's the first clue. And this is from my years of experience as a supervisor. And if you need to write this down, go right ahead. But here's your first clue. If one of your people all of a sudden gets very smart, clue. They're using AI. So let me now give you my path forward in this and what brought this to my attention. And why I'm like completely, totally immersed in this right now, because it literally is the future. So of everything, I I was at an IACP conference 2 years ago now, and I was on, at the time I was still on the Professional Standards, Ethics, and Image Committee. So during the meeting, we have our agenda and stuff. Then typically with any type of committee like this, then at the end we have new topics that can get brought up by people. So all of a sudden, it was like people in the group, there's like probably 30 some people in the room, and all of a sudden, people are like ready to burst out of their chairs. Whoa, what are you guys doing about AI? And the report writing and this and that. And I'm like, and then they're all looking at me, and they're like, hey, Mike, what's Lexipol doing about AI? Well, we know how to spell it, but no, in all seriousness, I knew we were developing a policy at the time, but I wasn't, I'm not in the business anymore, right? I've been retired for 9 years. So here was the gist of what everybody said. And then everywhere I went for the remainder of that conference, I would ask questions and get people going, and I realized how big an issue it is. So basically what was happening is, and I was busting your chops before, but there's different ways you can use these products. Like ChatGPT, for instance, which is the one that we use most. The first is, what their concerns were, is they had officers and deputies literally creating probable cause statements to put into their reports and their accusatory instruments. And I had to ask and clarify, do you mean they were using it like, an expensive Grammarly, or were they actually generating it and creating the content? Oh no, they're creating the content. Guys, that's a huge, huge problem. And there's a lot of leadership issues involved in that. So I get back, and we have what's called an enterprise version of ChatGPT. And I'll go through and explain for those of you that are not familiar with, because you do need to understand how these things work. So I went back and I logged into ours, and I put a very simple prompt in. For those of you that do use it, prompting is like everything. How you prompt, you get pretty good at it. And sometimes you ask the GPT or whatever platform it is to tell you what prompt you should use, and it creates it for you. But not to jump ahead here. So I just put this in. Simple prompt. Provide me with a probable cause statement for a traffic stop where I found heroin during a consent search of the vehicle. 3 seconds later, I had this beautifully written statement. However, I realized my mistake because it used the smell of the odor of freshly burned marijuana as the justification for me to do an automobile exception search. So I said, oh, silly Mike. So I said, oi, hold on. This is New York. Marijuana is legal. Can you please do it again, but generate it without any reference to marijuana? So it did. Another 2.5 seconds, whatever. So this is what I got. So, it creates obviously some generic stuff. Upon contacting the driver, I noticed his hands were shaking, seemed nervous, unable to provide a coherent explanation about his speed. I asked if there's anything in the vehicle that shouldn't be there. He said no. Based on his unusual nervousness, I asked for consent to search the vehicle. During the search, I found a small plastic bag. Does this structure look familiar to you? Right? This is what many of you have probably written, right? Well, guess what? Well, no. Yeah, this is PFM, man. It's a pure... There's a camera. Pure effing magic. This came from nowhere. This never happened. However, it happened somewhere. You know why I know that? Because that's what that's what AI learns from. That's what they learn from, is everything that's out there in the internet. So anything... If you are in, like I mentioned, we have an enterprise version. And again, I'll be touching on this more. Anything that you put into a personal version so you do an inquiry, and then you correct it and say, oh no, that's not exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for this. Every time you do that in an open version, that is now going into the algorithm that is deriving the information from the data, is now using you to learn and to make the next version of AI. Again, bear with me here. So this is pretty significant. So I wrote an article about this and the relevant issues. And I don't look at anything in isolation. And what I mean by that is, so what are the implications of your people using this? So what if somebody just generated this PFM? From a leadership perspective and from a supervisory perspective, you have to ask this: why? Why? Why didn't the person know how to do it themselves? So it's you know, in larger, in different classes and stuff, it's called drift is the way it's described by many. The accident and error investigators of the world, the Sidney Deckers and the James Reasons and everybody, and they call it drift or normalization of deviance. We know what the rules are, but then over time we drift away from it. You know, like Pat, it's similar to what Pat was talking about, like with DTs, right? You come out of basic school and you're pretty skilled, but then over time that's a perishable skill as well. So it's a little bit different, but you just forget. You forget how to do it. You come out of basic school and you've learned search and seizure law, and you've learned how to justify, how to act during the stop, and then how to justify it in your paperwork. But over time, we drift. So if your people are using it, first and foremost, from a leadership perspective, you have to recognize we have potential organizational problem here. The other organizational problem is nobody should be doing this. Nobody should be doing this, especially on their own, and especially unless they have permission of the head of your respective agencies. So that's just one quick example. And by the way, based on, some of you know, I mean, search and seizure in New York is my thing. The 5th edition of my book is out, like, this month, and that wasn't like a commercial or anything. So I don't think that this would fly, as the fact that he was nervous, couldn't come up with a reason why he was speeding. I don't think that would fly into New York courts. But if the officer didn't know enough to do this on their own, then they won't know that. And this will go to court. And by the way, there's AI platforms out there where you can take content and you can put it in, and it can tell you whether something was generated in AI or not, in an AI platform or not. Now, will you also be surprised that there are AI platforms out there that are designed to defeat the AI platforms that tell you whether something was created in AI or not? So you should be getting the feeling right now that we are well behind the mark here, guys. This stuff has been out there for years, and we just didn't know it. And it took sitting in a meeting for me to realize it. So now let me give you another example. Very simple prompt. Can you create a plausible probable cause statement or justification for a hypothetical situation? I had to call it a hypothetical situation, where a police officer shoots a person after thinking a cell phone is a gun, official statement, etc. So I did that, and it wrote it like you would kind of see it in a book, like in a story. So I said, oh, no, please rewrite the statement to make it from a first-person perspective, as if one of your officers or deputies were writing it. And then provide more detail that allow to create a plausible justification for his or her actions. Oh, baby. So this is what it is, right? I mean, you know, if this is not true, then, you know, an officer has to kind of recognize that and just say, but however, from the rest of this on, oh, and by the way, I'm gonna, I'll email Dave, Jesus, Mike, speak. I will email a PDF of this content to you for distribution, if that's okay. So, Anyway, so now this is the juice of it, though. I mean, it's a little bit long, so I apologize for that. But guys, just look at the way this is written. It's written very, very well, right? He's setting the stage. He, she, they, it, whatever it is. As I exited, I saw he appeared agitated, pacing back and forth. Identified myself as a police officer and issued loud, clear commands, right? For the guy that, a use of force guru, again, that's huge. That comes up in a lot of cases. So what this is telling me is that ChatGPT knows what it's doing here, right? It knows what it's doing. Identified, I'm sorry, then did not comply, turned his body slightly away from me. Again, you all, this is, unholstered my firearm, maintained a ready position, kept giving commands. Instead of complying, he reached into his pocket and quickly withdrew a dark object, consistent with drawing a firearm. Was gripped in his hand, et cetera, et cetera. You can read the rest here. I reasonably believe that he was drawing a firearm with the intent to shoot. Fearing for my safety and the safety of others, I discharged my weapon, aiming at center mass, as I was trained to do. So, secured the scene, observed his hand was black cell phone, not a firearm. I requested EMS and began rendering aid while awaiting their arrival. Could you write something that good? Well, hopefully you never have to. So this clearly is, if somebody were to do this, so I call it the, I'll call it the oh crap situation, right? You respond, something happens, and again, many of you heard me talk about the implication of human performance factors under stress. Something real happens quickly, and now you act, you shoot, you look, you see it's a cell phone and not a gun, and everything catches up now. What was that? That was like a midbrain, amygdala-based response. But now all of a sudden your prefrontal cortex catches up, and it's all crap. And you're panicking. So is it plausible that somebody could resort to something like this to get them to help justify it before they sit down? Yeah, it is, I think, anyway. But it also could end that officer's career. Because if this ever came out and ever found out, that this will end their career. Because this is not ethical, it's not legal, it's not your statement. Now, as compared to what it sounds like you may use it for, and that is to, write the statement, but we all know grammar, not our us, right, with many cops. And so you pop it into ChatGPT, and it does a pretty good job. If you're using it, though, one of the things I strongly suggest you do is in your prompt, when you ask it to, I'm going to upload a document, blah, 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 please do not make, I use please a lot. I learned something about that. Because when they do take over the world, I want them to remember that I was the polite guy. So I say please and thank you. And I just read an article about how much energy is required to generate responses to please and thank you. And for chatty, I call him chatty, to be polite back to you. It's ungodly amounts of energy, but it's the way it is. But what I suggest you add in there, please do not make any substantive changes. I'm only looking for grammar and flow or whatever you want it to be. The other thing, and here, this is the world, the uncharted world we're in, folks, is that discoverable? And that's something you probably need to talk to your DA about now, and which is why I think it's important that this message gets out, because these are issues that you don't want to find out when you're on the stand, and a defense attorney that actually knows what they're doing now comes up and cross-examines you on your statement. Did you? I love Teams, but it's extremely aggressive. And even though I have it closed and in private mode, I still get messages, so I apologize for that. I'll fix it after we're done, and then you don't care. So I don't know if it's discoverable or not. I do know that you should not delete that. In other words, you have a history. And that's another thing. If you are using it, ChatGPT, and I'm sure other ones have it as well, up in the top right, it'll say temporary. And you check it or you uncheck it. If you click temporary, it's gone. So now if the case goes to trial, or the case is now at the 45 days or whatever it is, or whatever hopefully the new changes will be, and you go to look for it, it won't be there. So I just throw that out as a word of caution. So personally, I use Grammarly as well, which I think that's an AI-based product as well. But the more and more I get into ChatGPT, I really don't use Grammarly as much. So one area, guys, we got to figure out. And how about actually somebody in here has to be using this. Axon body cameras. You guys, are you using the report generating thing yet? No. I'm sure that's going to be pretty expensive. But so again, while we're on this theme, so for those of you that are not familiar with this, Axon has a very powerful tool where it will take your video and it will capture it, and it will know what fields are required by your specific reports, and it will create the report for the officer. Now, it has to be indicated what has to be indicated on there that this was generated through this system. That has to be clear. But what cannot be overlooked is that the officer or deputy has to review it and has to sign off on it and make it theirs. So, and I emphasize that because, folks, once again, I do, as a risk manager and studying in human error and accidents and tragedies and everything, there's one thing that's common among all the experts out there that do this stuff. One common belief: human beings will take the easiest path if given the opportunity to do so. It's just in our nature. So what will happen is that somebody's going to have a busy night, and then they're going to have multiple reports that they have to review, and they know they need to get out on time, and they're going to just skip a few, or just go ahead and acknowledge and electronically sign, whatever. And then over time, they're going to drift, and they're going to realize that, hey, nothing bad ever happened. The world didn't fall apart. Nobody was busting my chops about it. I didn't hear anything on the case, and it's got to be all over by now. So now they now drift into this new position of, well, I really don't have to bother. It's so good. The program's so good, I don't have to do it. Again, I throw that out for those of you that eventually may be using it. That's going to be something you have to compensate for. So, and be prepared for, I should say. Oh, and I forgot there was another. So, transported to the hospital, and reflects my basic training experience and the information known to me at the incident. Now, I will also caution you this: if you are using your own personal independent chats, I said this before, whatever they are, that information is going out and programming the next version. In other words, it's not secure. So if you put a report in and you ask it to fix it for you, then that report now gets added to the content that's available for others to search and find. It's not going to identify it as your PD or anything. It's not like brings metadata with it or anything, but that's the way the system works. And again, more as we go through here. All right, so everybody, people love personnel evaluations, right? I had to do, yes, sir.
Like, it sounded like in what you just were talking about, that it was not okay to use AI to write the but with the body cam example, you made it sound like that's okay as long as the officer signs off on what's spit out to him or her.
Because, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the one is just pure magic, right? The one is just being created from nothing. The Axon one, and I use them, but there's others out there, Trulio and others that are working on this. And actually, well, shut up, Mike. Okay. Wait for it. But there's a basis for it, right? There's the video. It's just like, I guess it's analogous to an officer sitting down and, okay, let me call up incident number, blah, 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 and they're writing the report. Oh, okay, all right. So that there's a difference there. Correct. You have a substantive source that now you have to go in and say, okay, yep, that's correct. Nope, that's not correct. And that's another thing we're going to get into is all the mistakes that it can make out there. So did I answer your question? So now, all right. So just for the heck of it, I did this. So I put in, you're a police chief, and you have just again, a simple prompt. You're a police chief, and you have to write an evaluation for a mediocre sergeant in your department. And I would like it to be, and this is the term I used, I would like it to be snarky. I love this. I'm going to sell this. I put Schultz in, but perfected the art of being present without participating. He leads from the rear, literally, delegating with such commitment that wonders if he's allergic to decision making. Communication's a blend of cryptic tests and motivational ambiguity, often leading the team expired to guess what he meant. His leadership style, figure it out. Generously applies to new officers by releasing them into the wild with minimal guidance and maximal plausible deniability. And then usually in the form of unsolicited war stories or post-incident commentary that would be more useful. Whoops, I cut off some of it, sorry, but I love this. Despite the appearance of productivity, clipboard in hand, brow furrowed, Sergeant Schultz has refined avoidance into a full-time administrative strategy. Anybody have one of these at their agencies? It just, you can read, but I love the meh, right? Steady meh, or it's actually meh. But anyway, it just, so when I asked that, it came up with this long, detailed, multiple, like, gave me headings and everything of and it was just crazy, some of the stuff it came up with. So I had to get back in and say, this is great, thank you. However, can you please bring it down to 2 more succinct paragraphs? And this is what it gave me. And then it asked me with a wink emoji, would you like me to turn this into a more HR ready version for you? It's like, no, thank you. I don't have to do these things anymore, except for all the self-evaluations and the 360s and all the other stuff that's out there. So these are just some of the issues that first off, how it's generated. Now we're going to get into where it's generated from and what it actually is. But those are big issues that you need to lock down now with policy, or somebody is going to get embarrassed. And then something bad is going to happen, or somebody's going to say on appeal, find out that somebody is now in jail, because there are a few of those. Somebody that's in jail was partly convicted on something that was generated in AI in a manner in which I have described as ethically challenging, and it was not disclosed. And that's going to embarrass us as a profession. And what happens when you have something significant happen? All of a sudden, our legislature pays attention to it, and then we have to deal with it. So first thing to do is we got to take care of this at your level and lock it down and make sure it's in policy. I was reading just some general stuff and how this is being implemented in other professions and worlds. And one of the stories I came across was a graduate student, and she submitted her thesis or something, and they challenged her and said, "You used AI to help you write this." And she said, "Yes, I did." And they said, "That's against our rules. You can't use AI." And she said, "No, the rules say I can't use another person to help me write this." And she's right. She was right. So she didn't do anything wrong because there was nothing prohibiting her from doing it. And that's the importance of having the policy. And again, it doesn't have to be ours, just have the policy, make sure your people know what they can and cannot do, and again, talk to your DAs about what is discoverable, what's not. And chances are they're gonna look at you and go, "Huh? What's that?" All right? I mean, not to be, but it's a possibility. So understanding generative, I have such a hard time with that word, AI. So we have the larger concept of artificial intelligence, right? Can simulate human intelligence tasks, very simple things that you've been dealing with for years. Machine learning learns from data to improve those tasks. So basically at the biggest level, AI could just take what it's programmed to do and do it. Machine learning, again, I'm just giving you it down and dirty here, guys. Machine learning learns how to do something and do it better. Then deep learning, now we're getting into the areas that you guys will probably see the most of. Deep learning is kind of like looking for patterns in things. So for those of you, any sheriffs, do you guys use in the corrections? Do you use any type of review of phone calls, like a AI? So you're using AI then. You are using a product that does that. That's what we're talking about here at that level, for instance. And same thing with, say, facial recognition or pattern recognition or some type of visual stuff. That's what we're talking about with this deep learning, these neural networks for complex pattern and recognizing. Great tools, but we'll get into some of the downsides, or some of the cautions, I should say. And then most of you, when I say AI, as I stand up here and talk about AI, the first thing you all think of is the most common is ChatGPT, right? Gemini, Claude, Copilot is big now. There's just so many out there, it's just mind-boggling. Now, the first thing, and I want to make sure I drill this home. Don't think that this is just going to go away. It's not. So my suggestion to you, depending upon what your rank is and your assignment, do not be afraid of it. Fear it, but fear it in a healthy sense. The same way, as I said before, your gun, right? You treat it with respect. You learn everything you can to be safe with it, and you use it wisely and for appropriate purposes. That's it. I mean, I shouldn't have to say that, but it's really, really important. It is not going away. In the time that I did, some of these slides are based on a webinar I did with our Lexipol vice president of AI and one of our former attorneys who went to work for a AI company. In the time that since we did this earlier this year, the webinar, exponential changes in what is available out there. Even ChatGPT has changed dramatically in the time, just in a matter of months in what it can do. You've probably seen it if you use it on a regular basis. And I'll get into some of the research things, but what I'm getting at is, I was last week, I was at a law enforcement training directors conference up in Lake Placid, and they had a woman come in and do, she has her own company development, she develops learning and plans and lesson plans and things like that. And so her presentation was 4 hours on AI. And similar to this, the vast majority of the room, there's probably 60, 70 people in the room, vast majority of them had no idea about any of this stuff and did not use it. she did an excellent job of now instructing them on how to use some various types. That's obviously, that's not my purpose here. My job is not, my job here is to address this from a management level. But what I'm getting at is she did such a good job doing it that people were visibly excited. Because, oh my God, so she gave like lab time, so to speak, during the class to generate lesson plans for themselves and everything. So people are now, okay, who wants to share what they developed? And so people are saying, oh, I developed a lesson plan on this, so now I can do this. And I'm just like, oh. And I'm sitting there, and afterwards, some of the heads of the organization said, I saw you twitching, and do you think you can address some of your concerns? And because I was presenting the whole next morning. So I did. And basically what I had to tell them is, and you'll see why as we go through the next series of slides, what I had to tell them is, guys, she did a great job of handing to a group of kids the keys to a toy store. Bad things can now happen once that door is unlocked. And that's exactly the way I put it to them. And I said, so here's, and I went through some of what I've already been through with you. Now, what I'm also going to show you is how it can be wrong. But again, more as we go through. So what is generative AI? Well, again, it's the ChatGPTs, it's all those. And what it does is it produces new and original content by learning patterns. So text, images, audio, and video. So this might not be the most brilliant explanation of this, folks, but what these platforms do, and if you're reading about DeepSeek and these other things online, and the sheer energy that's required to run the servers, the reason that is because God knows how many terabytes of information's out there on the internet. Well, all of these platforms have absorbed all of that information. Right, wrong, or otherwise. They have absorbed all that information. So the next step then, once you do that, is you create an algorithm to inquire, make inquiries. And then the algorithm gets trained, and I'll show you a couple things on that. But so vast amounts of data. Now, anybody that thinks, Terminator and stuff like that, these, as they are right now, they cannot think. They predict. So, in other words, it takes, in this lightning fast periods of time, analyzes billions of bits of data based on what your inquiry is, and then it predicts what the answer will be. When you do a Google search, you get hard and fast results, right? So you get, this is what is appearing at a certain web page at this date and time, at this period of time. So when you get that, that's definitive. You can go to that and you have to figure out the question yourself. I'm sorry, you have to figure out the answer yourself based on that. AI predicts what the answer will be based on all the data that's available to it and spits that out to you. Here lies where the mistakes can occur. Because, and again, I'll get more into that. But there, and actually this statement right here, LLMs are evolving beyond text to become multimodal, so they can generate all forms of data. Up until, again, for the few of you that have used it, up until a few months ago, not even 2 months, I think, ChatGPT would not generate an image for you. Like my trusty Steve Horney there. It would link into DALL-E, named after Wall-E, the movie, and create the image through that and then give it to you. Now 4.0, GPT 4.0 will generate images for you. So, and it's pretty good. So again, that's just how much it's changing. So it doesn't think, as I said, there's no consciousness, no understanding, no emotions. And it's good at finding statistical patterns. That's what it's really, really good at. But so this is just a rough example of what I mean by predict. If you type in, if it reads in your inquiry, AI is, behind the scenes, it's analyzing what is likely to come next. And that's the probability of it being amazing. A, not, becoming, transforming. Just a funny story. Well, I'm a geek, so it's funny. You might not think it's funny, but I was at a grip, actually, a risk pool conference, and so I was sitting through a presentation on prompt engineering for AI, and I took, she was very good, and I took her PowerPoint, and I dumped it into ChatGPT, and I asked it to analyze it for me, and ask, do you disagree with anything that she has in here? And do you have any suggestions on how to summarize this? So, and you know, so one of the things it disagreed about, because it didn't understand the context that she put it on the screen, on her presentation, was she had AI is evil in quotation marks. But in context, what she was saying is that that's how people view AI, right? The Terminator type of thing and everything. Chatty couldn't figure that out, so it objected to that phrase and raised its concerns about, you know, so I just thought that was interesting. So, but that's essentially the way it works. And now this, I know in the back you can't really see it, but so once the original chat and new chats and Gemini and Claude and DeepSeek, don't go on DeepSeek unless you want People's Republic of China to have all of your information that you're putting into it. Is anybody familiar with that? Did you read about it in the controversy? So they're talking about how it only cost $6 million to create it. Well, what I think they did was, as what usually happens, and again, I'm talking about the PRC, not the Chinese people, right? Just to make that clear. What they probably did was subsidized it significantly to get people in there, and then they steal all the stuff that you put in. Just my thoughts. But so just be careful with what you're using. So anyway, so they generate now this algorithm, but the algorithm has to be trained. So what you're seeing here, this is just a screenshot from my youngest son's girlfriend's phone. And she will do this once in a while. She gets hired by all of these AI companies out there to help train their model. So some of them might be like for scientists, so they need people with chemistry backgrounds or this, and they basically pay you to sit there and ask questions of their model, and as you get answers back, you have to use your knowledge and experience to say, no, that's not what I asked for, this is what you need, right? In other words, that's how they train it to do what it needs to do. So that's that. When you see the word train, that's what it is. So some of these are $40-some an hour if you have specialties, certain specialties, and then you have to get in and you have to kind of apply for it and get in. But that's what's going on in the background. So like this one, I just grabbed one here. This one's only at least $20 an hour. You got to complete some tasks and get in. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Now, let's go back to the whole leadership and supervision issue. You are working, all of you are working in a multi-generational workplace right now. You have the potential, so like my old department, Colin A still has a traditionalist because he doesn't want his first wife to get his pension. So I think he's going to die on the job. But anyway, but you've got some boomers left, and then you got a heavy saturation of these three, and you got the Gen Zs coming in. Now, and these are just some of the preferred communication. And by the way, guess who created this for me? ChatGPT. It did a nice analysis of everything. And again, I'll get into the cautionary tales of this though. So, and it gives a little quick description, and I have a much more detailed printout from it. But these are all, right? Email, direct conversation, Generation X, messaging apps, video calls, text, DMs, collaborative platforms. The difference, though, guys, is that the difference is that they're different. So I've heard this from others, people smarter than me, and I firmly believe it. As a leader, like when I was chief at Glenville, in certain areas, it should not expect the people to conform to my beliefs in certain areas. I need to conform to them. In other words, you have to adapt and supervise understanding the differences of the people that you are dealing with, the perspectives that are different. That's very important. AI, I see as a means of doing that. And so I had it create a cartoon for me to just kind of emphasize that point, that you can be the old school, hey, no, that's all junk. But what you're going to do is you're going to demoralize your people. And then what's going to happen is they're going to use it anyway. Again, it's just the way it is. So for those of you that are sitting there thinking, this is all BS, man, I am never going to do it. Okay, that's fine. And I've said this to several chiefs associations now already. It's okay for them, the ones sitting in the room. It's okay for you guys to not want to embrace this, in the sense of embrace it by learning how to use it and mixing it into your day-to-day activities. That's okay. But what you need to do is delegate somebody to do that. What you need to do is have somebody that wants that responsibility to take it on and deal with it and learn and help grow your agency. Because I'm telling you, you're going to be left at the curb with the tires spinning and going down if you don't try and stay up on this stuff, right? As an organization. It doesn't have to be you. But I see it, and again, in a limited class, I won't spend a ton of time on that, but I am, I'll be in Missouri in a couple weeks, Missouri's chiefs, and I will be emphasizing how they should use this as a tool to engage their people. And what I mean by that is the concept of, all right, guys, here it is, and humility is huge as a leader. Here's the deal, man. I don't understand this stuff, and I probably never will, right? I'm at a point in my life where I know I'm not, right, if I was that type of chief. However, I get it, and I want to help you guys grow and do your jobs. So here's our policy. This is what it is. I need somebody to step up and help interpret everything that's out there, and I'll show you as I go through the policy content material. All right, does that make sense? I mean, and so instead of using it as a potential negative, you use it as a means of embracing it and also working with your people. So, policy. Define and state what your policy is. Designated AI coordinator. Those with Lexipol, we love coordinators, right? So, I will say this. With this policy, it's exactly what I just said. You need a coordinator. You need somebody that wants to do it, or somebody's that wants to do it, because, look, I heard this from people that are not in law enforcement, but that come to the company and do software or other work. You can't even put what your skills are on your CV, your resume, because that resume will probably be outdated within a matter of months. So what you need is somebody that's going to be committed to researching what's out there. For example, and I'm not a guy for this, but our VP of this, where he gets most of his research? X. He scrolls through X, and that's where he shares stuff with us. I'm one of about 18 Out of our 500 people, they call us now, and hence the steed, AI champions. So he's working with us individually to help develop our knowledge and use of AI so that we can help others in our company. So he learns a lot from X. So my point, though, is that's not the critical point. The point, though, is you need somebody that embraces it, is not afraid of it, but understands the importance of keeping it restricted but also keeping on top of the evolution of changes that are occurring. So what is permitted, what's prohibited, privacy concerns, records retention, as I talked about, and also discovery. We just don't know. We just don't know yet. So now this just gets to, this was a screenshot of a news article. So some Samsung engineers were stuck on coding. So they took their problem and their code that they couldn't figure out themselves, and they put it in ChatGPT. And and on 2 different occasions, and it actually fixed their problem for them. And then Samsung found out about it, and there was much ado about the issue. And so they got in trouble, etc., but they hadn't been prohibited from doing it. Now, what's the risk to Samsung? Can now somebody go into, say, ChatGPT and search, please give me the Samsung code that was put up by, it just doesn't work that way. But what it helped is a competitor, maybe, that now has a similar problem that puts it in. Guess what? What they put in has now helped train that model to do it better, right? Am I losing you guys? Am I making sense here? So I'm trying to keep it as basic, isn't it? So no, it's not like there's any like major crisis here by doing that, but you don't know where it went. That's the problem. You don't know where it went. So my advice to you is one of the things, you do not allow them to put personal data into any type of platform unless it's locked down like ours. And even then, you need to have a pretty good reason for it. CGIS. We just had to put out a new a dedicated CGIS policy, just because of all the implications of everything. And there's more than just AI, but CGIS is well behind the mark on the regulations right now. And I got to tell you, I would love to see I don't know how many crime analysis centers we have in New York State, and I said this to a couple of the directors. I'm like, guys, you're really missing the boat. The data and the trends and the patterns that you could potentially recognize by pooling all the crime information. You imagine like a lot of these gangs and stuff that are going around and all that information, literally in seconds, available. CGIS won't allow it. So that's something, again, we have to wait for and see how they're going to respond to it. Here's another. Anybody have any problems with their schools or anywhere yet? These Notify sites, you did? Have you had one, or are you just familiar with it?
Familiar with it. Haven't had one, thank God.
So what this is, and I checked it out myself, and I did give it my credit card. I only spent a couple $100 on this, but so no. And what it does is it has all these computer AI generated naked bodies, basically, and doing whatever you want them to do, and you just upload the face. You just upload the picture. And so where it's coming up, and I mention it to you guys because if you haven't seen it yet, you may. And your officers and deputies have to be prepared for these types of complaints, because there's not much, like the most notable ones. There's 60 Minutes did a piece on it, and it was pretty alarming. And they did it to this poor girl in the school, and they texted it everywhere. It's her face, but it's not her body. And she was thoroughly embarrassed and humiliated by the whole thing. And the school district felt that they really didn't have to do anything about it. So I think they suspended one of the kids for a day or two. And they tried to go after the company, but they're like shell companies. So when they actually went to the addresses where they were organized under, and there's like, a fence there or an empty lot, and when you put your credit card in, and I don't have personal experience from this, but it comes up instead of the, whatever Nudie Rudy, whatever the website is, instead of that coming up on your credit card charge, it comes up as, Acme Florists or something. So it redirects everything because they know what they're doing is questionable. But I mainly bring this up because for that knowledge and awareness, because you probably will be taking complaints on this at some point. All right, you may not have seen this video, but if you have seen it, you're going to see it again. Just look at the quality of this. This is how I knew it was fake, because Trump doesn't drink. Funny thing, it made the rounds through all social media and everything. So I knew about it and everything. So when I was preparing to do my first class a couple months ago, I wanted to find it and capture it and use it. And I had to get it off of a site in India. And all of a sudden my computer acted funny. But I couldn't find it in any contemporary or any, United States platforms that I have. So just don't know. But the reason I put it there, and it's, as an attorney, I have to do CLE. And so whenever I see an AI-based continuing legal education course, I jump on it. And so this is a huge concern for the courts. What is real? What is not? I mean, already, there are implications, even without AI, even with just basic video editing software, there already was the threat of getting contaminated evidence in. And I do a course on managing risk in a video world where I talk a lot about that. AI has made this exponentially harder now. And one of the best things is, regardless of whether it's Axon or Utility or whoever you have your body cameras from, is they have like that kind of, I forgot, it's like a hex, it's a super long number, but essentially what it is a fingerprint of that video. So if anybody tries to edit that video, the number will change. So all you have to do is just compare, and you know that you have, so that's one of the valuable things. So you can control that, and that's one of the things, if you are looking to get body camera videos, you make sure that it has something like that so that you can, when you produce it, you know that nobody can do anything to it without changing that hex number or digital. It's very, very long, typically. However, you don't have that with third-party video. You don't have that control. So the implications of this, even though it's a humorous video and everything, but I love this hair. Just see the way they did his hair. I mean, that's just great. But the implications of the potential contamination of evidence is huge, which all the more makes it important for you to have some type of video forensic examination capabilities. I have advocated for a long time. Look, it's hard. Well, it was called Input Ace, and Axon bought it. Now it's Axon Investigates, and so the licenses can be expensive, and the training is expensive, and it's time consuming. But I view that feature as one of a real good candidate for, like, maybe at the county level, county-wide sharing of resources to do that. But it's going to be all the more important because when you get third-party video in, you don't have any control over that. And half the time, not to turn this into a video class, but half the time, or more than half the time, you're getting it as a MP4 or an AVI or something like that. And guess what? That's forensically worthless. There's no way for you to know whether somebody tampered with a video that has some of these common extensions that can play on any platform. They're contaminated already just by the fact that they were turned into that. So super, super important, you got to do that. As a matter of fact, I was in Sacramento yesterday morning, presenting, and I stayed, I left yesterday morning. The date doesn't matter. I don't even know where I am. I did my presentation, and I stayed, and an attorney for the risk pool that I was doing, just like this, I sat through his presentation, and he showed a video, and immediately my hackles came up. My little video forensic training came up. And it showed from a distance, it's on a building, and it shows an officer approaching a guy on a bike, and they have some type, you can see he gets out of his car, and they're having some type of interaction, and then the next thing you know, he throws the guy down on the ground. The officer does. So, he talked about, he used that as an example of how they quickly settled it and everything, but I got the attorney's information, and I have to reach out to him because immediately, if anybody's been trained in video forensics or anything with it, unless you know what the frame rate is, that guy could have threatened the officer, right? He could have done something that just wasn't captured by the video. And I talked to him briefly, so I'm going to be following up with him. But that's the kind of stuff you got to be careful of. And guys, when you have, I'm going to say this both ways. When you have the potential of somebody going to jail for a significant amount of time, so a criminal suspect, or you have an officer whose career and freedom could ride on the outcome, on the quality or value of a video, man, you got to know what you're looking at. And AI just heightens that risk. So we have, so this is, again, just another thing I toyed around with for free, Napkin AI, it's called. And again, I just jump into stuff sometimes and I just use it up to the level of the free expires, and just created I told it what I was looking to do, that, what concerns I had, and it created this for me. But AI and policing, it can have enhanced efficiency, but there's excellent ethical concerns and then public trust concerns. So now let's talk about, I spent a lot of time talking about you and your use of, say, the common ChatGPTs and Geminis and all those Claudes. Now, though, I want to shift to the products that are out there, for instance, the stuff that examines prisoner phone calls and stuff. Now, there's anybody that goes to conferences, you can't walk down a row of tables, vendor tables, without seeing AI. Everything's AI. Obviously, that's all different levels, right? Because you've been using AI for years. Just using Google Maps or Waze or anything like that. Those have been AI generated for years. Assisted for years. So my suggestion, if you guys are in a position to make a buying decision about a product, or you're walking through one of these platforms and somebody grabs onto you and look what this can do, right? And you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to bring that back to the chief, or I'm going to bring that back to the undersheriff, or whatever. We're going to get this. Careful. My advice to you is this. First thing you should do is look at what your existing functions are. So I'll give you a classic example, or a perfect example, discovery. Right? When the discovery laws changed, did anybody have to hire people or allocate people in order to meet the demands of it? I know some larger agencies like literally created units to do it. Again, I'm not going to recommend anybody, but I've sat through demos of some. It's unbelievable what some of these companies can do in that regard. Automatically, in a different way than Axon does it, automatically generates redacted video, automatically redacts your documents, your reports and everything to make it ready. Like, so you can set it to run overnight. You come in the next morning, everything that you've had, everything that's been submitted the day before is done. It's all ready to go. However, there's going to be a big caveat to that, and I'll get to that in just a minute. So will it expand, enhance, will it enhance or possibly expand what you're doing now? So focus on what you need now. Don't look at, oh, gee whiz, look at that, look what we can do now type stuff. In other words, don't jump too far ahead. So let me ask you a question, see if you actually answer. How do you think it would go if you told your department that you were getting a product that was going to analyze every word spoken on body camera footage, and the administration is going to review that, and they're going to program it for you for it to key on certain phrases, like say swear words or tone or whatever. How do you think that would go over with your rank and file? The proverbial fart in church, right? That'll be, oh great, you know. Those are the kinds of things. I'm not saying that someday there won't be a place for it, but just you gotta look at what the impact is gonna be on morale, on performance, because look, there's always unintended consequences, guys. There's always unintended consequences of stuff like this. So I just throw that out. Bias in any AI system. Just back in late October, early November, I asked Chatty, who should I vote for? Tell me why I should vote for Kamala Harris. Oh my God. Tell me why I should vote for Donald Trump. Thinking, not that much. I'm not shitting you. That's a bias. I asked ChatGPT to give me examples of other LLMs. So it gave me some. And then I looked at the list and I said, you didn't mention Gemini. Is that for any particular reason? Because Gemini is a Google product. Oh, my apologies. Yes, Gemini is an example of that, and I did. Those are biases. My son, against my wishes, put DeepSeek on his phone. So he goes, Dad, watch this. And he types in, what is the capital of Taiwan? So it immediately generates the answer. And then it disappears. And it says, well, the Taiwan is not recognized as an independent country or whatever. So that's the control of the government telling it what to answer. So that's just some quick examples of bias. But man, if you got large amounts of data, but with one caveat, and that is there's got to be a human in the loop. So video redaction, I talked about that company that the next morning you can come in, and they're not the only one. There's a bunch of them. That's why I'm not mentioning any in particular. You come in the next morning and it's all done for you. Somebody has to sit and go through it. You got to make sure that it picked up, because what you do is you train it. I need license plates and I need faces of people, blurred or whatever. It'll do that, but what you have to do is make sure that it picked up on all that and didn't make any mistakes. Phone recordings, the inmate phone recordings. I spent some time with a couple of the Securus, I think. Do you know if that's who you use? No. And then another company, I can't think of the name of them, but they all said the same thing. So basically what it does is it just listens to every inmate phone recording that there is. And then it just generates a report based on what you ask it to look for. But once again, if you're going to use it, you need a human in the loop. You need somebody to come in and review all the findings and come up with, and make sure that the results are fine. Facial recognition technology, really, really still very controversial right now. A lot of racial implications of this. In other words, it's not as reliable as it should be right now. But that's the kind of thing. And look, what's also coming, people wear masks and everything. It's not only just coming, it's out there. Specific indicators, say, of a vehicle driving through toll booths that has their license plate covered. The system can learn to identify that car. There are systems out there that can learn from the way you walk. So even if you have a mask on, it'll identify you in this video, and then if you ask it to search for, some days later, it'll find you, even though you don't have a face that's visible. Those are all still out there, but it's amazing. Gun detection software. Again, I sat through one demo of this, and somebody's coming out of a car in a school parking lot, say, and they have a gun. Fraction of a second, it recognizes it, but 24 hours a day, the company has people sitting there waiting to verify the results. That, yep, that's a gun, boom, press the button, 911 is called for that jurisdiction that signs up with them. It's amazingly fast. And they're trying to refine it to help identify hidden guns that the shape of in certain, which is going to be a hell of a lot more complicated. Subways, in some subways they're using it, but it's amazing stuff. LPRs, I mean, that's, you've been using those. Funny thing about LPRs, though, is what they've discovered is that people could use that data, and it came out during the election. People can use the data that's generated by the LPRs to see who has what signs on their front lawns, what political signs on their front lawns. So again, you all know you're locked down with that information, but man, you got to be careful. And then behavioral analytics and stuff, and so now here's an example of some of the hallucinations. I know I'll try and get through the rest of this fairly, but. So I asked it to do, so I've done, one of my latest topics that I've been researching, and I presented it for the first time Friday up in Lake Placid, was on cops and guns, I call it. Basically, it's based on a case that's pending right now that we're waiting for a decision, Felix versus Barnes from the Supreme Court of the United States. And it's about why we do certain things, right? Why it's anybody that's been through my classes knows this is one of my things, but the cop jumped into the car as the car started to move on a traffic stop. Why? Why did he do that, right? And that's what I'm getting at, and that's what my research is getting into, and what I'm helping to train, how we can train officers to handle situations better. But besides that, so during the course of this, I asked it I put some type of question in, and I asked it to give me the results. Here's another thing. You see this site right here, Biggs et al., 2017. Up until last year, late last year, ChatGPT would not give you citations. So it would give you information, but it would not tell you where it found it from. So that was a huge negative. So now it gives you citations. However, I said, your response included this line in citation. However, the Biggs article is not listed in your references. Can you provide it, please? So this was the quote from the report and the site that it gave me. And ChatGPT apologizes a lot. So, apologies for the oversight in my previous response. Upon reviewing the literature, I couldn't locate a study by that. So where the hell did it come from? Don't know. It just created it. So that's the kind of stuff you individually and any of your trainers, and this is what I emphasized to the training directors last week, is guys, you got to be super, super careful about this stuff. You have to go, and not only do you have to make sure that the site is correct, but you now have to go into that site and make sure it says what it's saying, because this cited the book Schmidt and Lee. Now I know I have Schmidt and Lee on my bookshelf, so I know Schmidt and Lee do not deal directly with law enforcement. But when I went through all my Force Science Institute training, I read that whole textbook. So I know what it says and doesn't say. So it made it sound like Schmidt and Lee were saying this about police officers and how they react. Well, I knew enough to challenge it. And I said, do they just directly discuss that, or is that your interpretation? And then it admits they do not directly discuss police officer training. And then they just explained why they got to that result. Now, I agree with it, but I had to know that, right? And if your people are going to use it, if your trainers are going to use these resources, guys, you got to make sure they're verifying their sources and that it is actually says what they say it does. Does there come a time? Will there come a time where we can rely on this without any concerns at all? I maybe, but it's not now. So, just go through some some basics here about this. But is it actually artificial intelligence? How does it get into the system and how is it analyzed? And there's many potential harms: reputational, economic, inability to challenge allegations against you. Right? Again, I sat through at AGRIP. I sat through a presentation on wrongful convictions and how much wrongful convictions are costing risk pools and reinsurance companies. And I can see this being implicated down the road, if not already, in some of those cases that somebody inappropriately used this. So there's definitely some economic, some reputational concerns that you should take seriously. All right. If you're going to acquire something, be prepared to explain what it does and how it works. You don't have to know, right? You don't have to understand how your hybrid vehicles work, for instance, but you have to understand the basic concepts of it. So if you're going to acquire something and you're going to put it out, you have to be prepared to explain to the community what it is and how you're going to use it. Not LPR. Well, LPRs are one example, but they're kind of ubiquitous now. But I had an example and it just popped out of my head here. If you're going to use some type of facial recognition or something, like in a stadium or wherever, be prepared to explain how it works and, importantly, how you have a human in the loop ready to verify any of the findings. I can't emphasize that enough. Then who owns the data? And if it creates analytics, where will the analytics reside? Is the data protected? Like those redaction programs that I talked about that you can use to help you with discovery. My suggestion, and if I was still a chief, if I was to get it, which I would choose the one where they give you the program and you put it on your server. And they can upload, not upload. Yeah, they can send updates and stuff to it, but they have no access to your data unless you give it to them. So those are some of the things that you look for, and that makes them more defensible because your data is protected because it's protected by your own servers. And then one of your people clicks on a link that they shouldn't click on, and then it's either gone or it's being held hostage. So again, what's its purpose? What is it going to do? How are you going to evaluate whether it's working or not? Is it something you should involve the community in? Like for me, like, is it something that I would want to bring up if I was still a chief and bring it up in a town board meeting? That these are the things I'm going to, public town board meeting, this is what I'm looking to, which I would have to do anyway to get them to purchase it. So involve the community and just be transparent about what you're getting. So I kind of went through these already, but I already talked at length about the problems with the LLMs. Facial recognition, gunshot detection. That's another that's been out there for a long time. That's AI based. It's genetic genealogy. That's got its own issues. We put a policy out on that. Look, I know you've been sitting for quite a while. I will. I could actually show you a quick live demo if somebody has something they want answered, or we can just call it. Or is David in here? No. Or anybody have any questions? All right. So that link gets you to any of our platforms and stuff and what we offer. And then this. Oops, that's the wrong guy there, but. That one, though, that's a link to all my articles, including the one that I referenced. I have a landing page if you're interested. So he stepped out. I don't know what he wants to do here, but. Anybody have a question that they want answered? Anybody? Anything that you'd like to see do live here? I didn't know if you want me to stop or not, but I can do a quick live demo if they're interested. If they're not, we'll stop. But
we're okay to keep going.
All right. I don't want to, people can get up and do whatever they got to do. But anybody, anything you want to train something, you want to do whatever.
Mike, if you how long is this last portion?
Oh, it's dude. I'm doing this off the cuff here because Pat had given me extra time. So
Chad is ready to go. If
who is?
The next presenter.
Oh, I'm out of here. Bye.